Hi everyone, welcome to Color by Felix and thank you so much for being here today. So Thanksgiving is coming up and I wanted to show my appreciation by making a full lesson here on YouTube for you. And so I hope you'll enjoy it and learn a lot from this. And also if you're interested in learning more with me as your mentor, check out my mentorship program. There's a link right here or in the description down below to learn more. Alright guys, let's get straight to it and have fun. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting on a 14 by 18 studio canvas. It already has a gesso coat on it and ready to go. So I don't add anything to it. I paint straight on, and basically what I did to prepare this canvas, the only thing I did was add a glaze of water all over the canvas. What that does, and let it dry. You can use a hair dryer or let it naturally dry. Basically what that does is it stretches out sometimes you can get canvases that kind of loose on the edges, but when you add that water glaze, it stretches that canvas out and makes it nice and firm. So now this is dry and ready to be painted on. You could use any size canvas you have available. Just keep in mind, if it's a little bigger, make sure to add a little more paint. Obviously, if it's smaller, add a little less paint. For brushes, we're going to use my M1 blending brushes. These were great for blending with acrylics. So basically, I use one to dab in the water and pick up paint, and I'll be showing you exactly how I do this, and laying out all my colors where I want it to be, and then with a dry blending brush, I lightly press and swirl and blend all the colors in, and it creates a smooth transition. Also, we might use the M2 blending brush. This is a size smaller than the M1. It's the same thing, just a size smaller for certain areas here. And then also from my 4-piece brush set, comes in a pack like this. I'll show you what's inside. We're going to be using number 8 and number 4. These are the same brushes, just a size smaller. It's like Filbert synthetic brush hair right here. Filbert style, and then a size smaller. I use these a lot, and I usually use them damp. I dab my brush in the water, and it makes the brush softer. It's easier to blend when I try to create smooth transitions. Having the brush damp, it works really good. So I use these a lot. And then also a 1/2 inch flat brush. And a 0 detail brush for all the little details and branches and things like that, okay? Also, we're going to use an artist sponge. You can get them at any art store or online, and just type in artist sponge and they should come out. And so I chose one that I like best. They come in a pack, so I chose one that has a nice, look to it. So what I do with this is I add like bushes and like especially branches and leaves. And since we're painting a lot of like trees and leaves, I'm going to be using this. And what I do with this is dab it in the water, and I'll be showing you. And working damp also, because it's easier to squeeze when it's wet a little, right? And then you just use a section of your artist sponge and lightly dab, and it creates a beautiful effect. So we're going to use that today. And if you don't have one of those, that's okay. You can use your number 8 brush. I also sometimes, or a number 4, I also use this to kind of dab. And in my other tutorials, I showed you how to paint trees and leaves with just these brushes as well. And you just lightly dab, use a corner, kind of move it around and create like little cool effects. So there's different ways of painting leaves. For paint, we're going to use my 24 set of acrylics. I'll show you which colors we're going to use from this set. Medium yellow, orange, scarlet red, cobalt blue, sap green, and viridian. And from my 5 set of acrylics, I'm going to be using titanium white and carbon black. For palette, I'm going to use my paper palette here. These are nice because it comes in 40 sheets, and basically once you're done painting on it, you tear the page off and then start fresh again, instead of wiping, cleaning it over the sink. I used to do that, but this new design, I love it. It's so fast and easy to work with. You can use any palette you have available. We need a palette knife to mix our paint, some paper towels to wipe your palette knife, right? You don't want paint to dry, and also dab some of your brushes onto. For example, I'm dabbing it in the water, and if I have too much water, I just dab it lightly like this to take away part of the water out, and it still has water, but not too much, right? So that's why we need the paper towels. And then also, of course, a jar of water somewhere next to you. And finally, if you have this, use a hair dryer to dry your first coats. Basically, you want to make sure once you have your first layer down, you want to make sure it's dry before applying more layers on top. That's how I like to work with acrylics. I like to work in sections, and I make sure my background is dry before adding more on top, okay? Because if you're working while it's still wet, let's say I blended the sky, right? And it's a smooth transition. And if it's still wet and I try to add on top, you'll kind of peel off the paint, and you'll start to see the canvas showing through because it's not fully dry, right? So make sure your background is dry, and this allows for a faster drying time. But if you want to take a break and have a snack or whatever, you can let it naturally dry, which usually takes around 20 to 30 minutes, and you'll be good to go. All these materials I'm using today, including paints, brushes, are available at colorbyfelix.com if you're interested. But I always say this, use what you have available. If your red is a little off, use any kind of red you have available, any kind of orange, or you could create orange. The way you create orange is add a little red and yellow, and then you get orange. So some of the things, or for example, green, right? Sap green. If you don't have this color, mix yellow and a little bit of blue and you'll get green, or yellow and black and you'll get a little green, right? So there's different ways. Yes, the shade will be a little off, but it's okay, because there's no right or wrong how to create a certain specific, you don't need to copy exactly the way I have mixed and, have my color on my canvas. The most important thing in these tutorials is to challenge yourself how I can have fun, to be creative and make my own patterns, my own shapes of rocks and things like that, right? So I hope you'll do that in this tutorial and enjoy the process. So I'm going to quickly explain what we're going to do today before mixing our paint, so you kind of get an idea. So I like to start from the furthest distance and up to my closest, right? So which is the sky. So we're gonna quickly lay out, like I said, the background sky is gonna be small and quick, so we're not gonna focus too much on adding clouds and things like that, because a lot of it's gonna be covered by tree leaves and branches and things like that. So we're gonna create about this much of the sky here, and then from there, because that's the furthest distance, and from there we're gonna add our closest trees that are far away still, but they're going to be the next thing in the background, right? And then the next thing, we're going to add some rocks, further bigger rocks, maybe a cliff here, and like a bigger hill and rock here with details. And we're going to sketch that out and start adding bigger and other trees that are a little closer than the further away trees, right? We're going to add those, detail those, and then from there we're going to add a base of our water. We're going to quickly sketch our water, and then from there we're going to sketch our rocks and placements of our, where we want our rocks to be in like the bushes and trees, little ones, right? So we're going to add that, and then from there we're going to detail everything that is up close here. And then what I like to do is hang the painting, take a step back and then look at it, and then assess and study it for a bit and see if I need to correct something. See if I need to change or add more detail, or with acrylics, that it's fun because you can always paint over on top and keep adding, and it's all about layering. So the more layers you start to add to your painting, that the more it will look interesting, because you're going to have all these textures and beautiful color transitions, and it's going to make your painting more interesting that way. So don't be afraid to add more layers onto your painting. Okay, like sometimes when you paint and you get stuck on a certain section, you're like, oh, I like the way this is. I worked so long on this section. Now I have to paint a little bit, like half of it, cover it with this bush or something, which happens all the time. Don't be afraid to do that, because sometimes by doing that, you will create depth and you'll create it's something that will surprise you, right? So just challenge yourself, have fun, practice. I always say each painting I do till this day, I've been painting for 18 years now. To this day, each painting I take it as practice. Very few paintings that I've done where I take it seriously to create fine art and really try to my best to work on a piece, which usually takes months, right? But most of the paintings right now I paint are all, I consider them practice. When you have that mindset, it makes you release the pressure of trying to be perfect or the fear of messing up, right? So anyway, I hope that encourages you guys and prepares you for this lesson. All right, I have my palette paper right here, and we're gonna start from this corner and kind of work our way this way. That's how I like to work on my palette paper. Okay, but totally up to you. We're gonna start with titanium white. I use white a lot because white helps to create smooth, lighter transitions, right? It takes away the vibrancy of the color and it creates more shades transitioning. So it makes it more softer, you know, and so white is, I use this probably the most out of all my colors. And then black to darken a shade, right? So white to lighten a shade and make it smoother and take away more like the vibrancy to create depth, right? You want the far away mountains, trees, and things that are far away to be like light, a hint of color, not too much, right? White does that. But if you were all just to paint straight from the tube, it's just going to look flat. So adding white and a little bit of dark, you know, black to create depth, it really makes a big difference. So that's why I like to start with white. We're going to create, since the sky is going to be simple, we're going to create 3 shades, very simple ones. So I'm not going to cover too much of my canvas, so I'm going to add about a thumb amount of paint right there, and then a little bit less, just a little less on the second one, and then on the third one, finally, even more less. So about half a thumb amount. And if we need to, we'll add more. But let's start there with white. Make sure to close your lid in your paint every time you're done adding so that the paint won't dry out. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of medium yellow, a very small amount. Very small amount. You can see I barely added any yellow. We want the sky to be bright, okay? So that our trees can stand out. Next, we're going to add cobalt blue. We're going to add a little bit here, a small touch here, and a little more on this one. Okay? Small. More white than the cobalt blue, okay? Let's mix these colors and see what we get. Palette knife. Start from the lightest color so that you won't be bringing the dark colors and kind of mixing everything together. And quickly mix everything. It's it's still, you could see there's a hint of yellow, but it's not like super vibrant and, you know, it's still more on the light, you know, white side, right? That's what we want. Something like this, and then I like to bunch it up. That way the paint stays fresh longer, like this. And you can take part of the yellow, why not? A little bit. Mix it with this next color. Because basically we want to create a smooth transition in our sky, right? From the light to the darker areas. And when you start blending on your canvas, these colors are going to blend together. So I don't worry about cleaning my palette knife. I actually sometimes, like what I did here, take part of the yellow, mix it in with this color, because it's, you know, it just makes it easier when you're blending on the canvas. So you could see it's starting to transition towards the blue, but it's still very light. That's what we want. And then this one should be more of the blue sky. Okay, something like this. In fact, this, as you could see, it's a little too blue, right? So this transition will be It's fine, you can blend it like this, but I want to add a little more white because I want it to be like a lighter sky. I don't want it to be too, too dark and too bright with colors, because I want my trees and fall color, the leaves to stand out, right? So I'm gonna add and then, excuse me for the sunlight. Usually you would want sun to be shining onto your paint. I'll move it in a little bit, but basically it's a little lighter, and I'll show you what I got so that you can see clearly. Once you're done mixing, always clean your palette knife. I dab it all the way in my water jar right here, in the water, and then I dab it all the way in the water and then just wipe it like this. Really quick, right? So it's now clean again. All right, let's lay out our first colors, somewhere right here, and blend it quickly on top, going from lightest to darkest. So I got my water jar, right, somewhere next to the canvas where it's easy access. And so what we're gonna do is pick up our first blending brush, right, dab it in the water all the way, okay, and then squeeze part of it out, okay. You don't want a lot of water inside. There's still some water, but there's not a lot of water, right? So I have my water jar right next to my canvas, and basically whenever I say I'm dabbing my brush in the water lightly, basically I'm just the tip right here, I'm just going like this, and then if I need to, I pick up more paint. We don't want a lot of water where it starts to drip. That means you have too much water, so I'd encourage you to squeeze some water out, more water out of your brush, or pick up more paint and kind of try to equalize it and blend it all in, right? So practice blending. It's, once you catch the technique, super easy and fast and a lot of fun. So here's my colors, all right? So you can see like a light shade going into blue and into a darker blue sky, right? They're all light colors, but you could see that transition going on. We're gonna start with our lightest color. I'm gonna pick up all the paint just like that, randomly pick it up. I have water in here and this paint, right? So we're gonna start from the middle. That's where the glow of the sun is gonna be the brightest, right here in the middle. So we're just gonna start by swirling. And if you see bubbles, that means it's good, you have a good amount of water in your brush, okay? Bubbles is good, it's not bad. So I'm gonna pick up more paint. But if you start to see water dripping, that means you have too much water. So you could see I swirl and kind of randomly add it like this. All right, I'm gonna pick up the rest of it. And then I'm gonna dab my brush lightly in the water, real quick, like I showed you, just the tip, pick up the next color, this bluish color, and then right where we left off, kind of blend it in a little bit with the yellow, but don't go too far down. Okay, dab my brush lightly in the water, and then pick up the paint, make sure it's nice, evenly spread on your brush, and then right here we're gonna add that. Like I said, a lot of this is gonna be covered, so we're not gonna focus too much on making it perfect. But to create a smooth transition, mainly in the middle, going out right here. The next color is this darkest blue, or the darkest color you could see. This blue here, okay? I'm gonna dab lightly my brush in the water, take this lighter blue, add it right in here. Okay, dab my brush lightly in the water, pick up more lighter blue and a little bit of this darker blue right here. I could have added a little more white, but that's okay. That's okay. And then make sure you create a little transition, but don't go too far down. So something like this, right? So now I'm gonna put my brush in the water jar so that it won't dry out, and quickly pick up my dry M1 blending brush, right? And work dry by pressing and swirling lightly and blending the colors in nicely. So I'm swirling and blending all my colors and creating that smooth transition from the light yellow to the darker sky blue colors. And I'm working my way upwards, okay? And then also if you see some of the, especially the new blending brushes, you might see some loose hairs coming off. That's totally normal. It happens with any brush. But if you do see that, don't worry about trying to pluck it out. Let it be. Just focus on blending, making sure your blend is smooth and even. And then once it's all dry, basically it's super easy. You could lightly kind of scratch it off, and all the hairs, a few of them, if you have it, will come off super easy without damaging the background, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so keep that in mind. Over time, when you use the blending brushes, they work better and better and shed less. So now I'm gonna let this dry and wash my blending brushes, because if you wash and take care of you don't want to leave them in your water jar too long. If you take care of your brushes, they'll last you a long time. So while this dries, I'm gonna quickly wash my brushes, get a new water jar, and then we'll continue to the next section. All right, so the way I clean my blending brushes is I use warm water and a little bit of brush soap or dish soap, and then swirl it on my palm over running warm water. Swirl it gently, and then once you're done, squeeze part of the water out, and then use paper towel to kind of swirl it and fluff it back up, and you'll be good to go. Now the background is dry and we're ready for the next section. See, this was super simple. I did have like one loose hair. Once it was dry, super easy. I just lightly just peeled it off like this without any damage. So just keep that in mind so that you won't worry about trying to pluck it out while the paint is still wet. It gets messy like that. Okay, so try that and see how that will work for you. The next section will be adding faraway trees here. We're gonna add some light yellow orangey type trees, and this is what I have added on my palette right here. So I added like a thumb amount of white, and then a little bit of medium yellow, and then a little less than thumb amount of white, medium yellow, about the same amount, and a little bit of orange straight out of the tube, and then white, titanium white, sap green, a touch right there, and a little bit of carbon black right there. So I'm going to mix these colors and show you what I get. So this is what I got. Bright yellow, orange, and then this greenish kind of gray color right here. I did decide to add one more color, a little darker, so I took part of this, as you can see, just part of it, added right there, and then added more black and sap green. I want to create a darker shade, but not too dark, because these are further away. I still want it to be, on the lighter side. We'll make things that are more darker as they get closer. Here we are. So remember, mix colors that are something similar like this. It doesn't exactly have to look like mine, okay? But do keep in mind that we want it to look more on the lighter like hint of color. Like even these are a little vibrant, but we'll just see how it looks, and if we need to correct, we'll add a glaze of white to make it softer, because these are further away trees. I don't want them to stand out too much yet. Okay, so as long as you have more white and they're more on the lighter side, then you're good to go. Okay, so then because after that we're going to be adding more trees and more color, and they're going to be more vibrant, and that'll create depth, right? So we just want to keep that in mind. All right, so I got my water, clean water here, and then remember the artist sponge. I'm going to dab it all the way in the water and squeeze in the water, make sure it becomes all soft, and then squeeze all the water out, everything, so it could be nice and soft. Okay, so we got this. So the way I like to use this is I like to choose a corner. So I'm going to choose like this corner right here, and then I squeeze to create smaller details, and then if you want bigger leaves, you let it be as it is, right? More space in between the leaves, right? So you play with the shape of your leaves, but like I said, these are far away trees, so we want to make it a little smaller leaves. So I'm going to squeeze part of it and then dab. Let's start with the lightest color first, and then you know, we'll play around, go back and forth, but right in the corner like this, I'm not going to take a lot of paint, but you could see it creates a nice cool patterns and detail, right? So we're going to start from this corner, and we're going to just add right here. Okay, so from this corner, we're just going to randomly add all over the place. And you can bring it down. Okay, so take more, a little more, skip some areas. Maybe it goes up a little bit. You can barely see it maybe on the camera, but it's okay. We want it to be a hint of color in our sky. And then obviously as we go out, we're going to fade it out like this somewhere. In the back, it's just going to be faded with other colors and trees. So something like this, okay? And that's good enough right there. We don't want to overdo it. Next, we're going to add the orange. Let's play with the orange a little bit. So I don't need to clean my artist sponge. Just take the corner like this, squeeze it, and then we're going to add a little bit of detail. Not everywhere, but just a few areas where we think it needs some shadows and things like that of our leaves. And I quickly do this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I don't want to add too much of the color yet with this orange. And sometimes you can, you know, pluck mainly more on the bottom here where the sun is hitting the top. Is going to be lighter, right? So now I'm going to go back to the yellow. Kind of blend those two a little bit in randomly. Like that. That's good. All right, so our first faraway trees are added, and that's good enough. We could add a little bit of, actually, a little bit of orange. Let's add a little bit of orange right on top of this hill. Make it a little bit less orangey by adding yellow. And we're just going to blend those and then let it just fade out somewhere like that. Okay. Obviously we're going to be adding more. Let's add a little bit of orange on this side randomly. Randomly all over here. Don't cover the background too much. We still want that blue to be showing through. We're going to be adding a lot more detail on top of these, so I'm not spending too much time here. But something like this will do, okay? So now I'm going to put my sponge in the water and let it sit there, and we're going to pick up our number 4 brush. Dab it all the way in the water, make sure it's nice and damp, and then tap it on the paper, maybe squeeze it a little bit, move it around a little bit so that your brush becomes damp, okay? And sometimes what I usually do is leave my brushes, my number 8 and number 4, in the water for about 5 minutes before I start using them, because then it makes your, you know, hair softer. So that's what we want. So now we got like a quick sketch layout of our first, you know, faraway trees. We're going to kind of make things a little bit softer, right? So, and I'm going to use this color as well. This one we have mixed. So let's start with this one. Maybe mix it with a little bit of this orange together lightly with water. See, my brush is damp. It doesn't have too much water, but it has a little bit, right? So I'm going to add a little bit of that color and kind of create some shadows in my on my trees by swirling and kind of blending those two colors in. Okay, use a little more of this color with orange, mix it in, and we're just gonna add a few in here. And like I said, some of this is gonna be covered, so I'm not gonna focus too much on making it too perfect, but add a few little shadows in our faraway trees. Why not? Like this. Okay, a little bit here. And then here I'm gonna use a little more of this color, same thing, same technique. Maybe use a little more yellow to brighten it, because we're gonna go here and we're just gonna randomly kind of add some shadows here. Okay, something like that. You could see it's a little messy, but that's okay, because maybe let's add a little bit of that in here, that dark, dab it and kind of randomly add on the bottom certain areas. Like I said, this is going to be covered with other details here. All right, so now I'm going to shape out with the darkest color. I'm going to shape out right here. So we're going to create like a little cliff, right? Like a little cliff here. There's going to be one that is going to be, I'm actually going to add that right now. There's going to be a cliff. Let's say it's happening right here. And it's just, it has like a little bump. And then it goes down. Like this, right? I'm gonna dab my brush in the water and kind of use this darkest color with water and I'm kind of quickly sketching out the cliff to get an idea. Okay, so little cliff right there with water. Dab my brush in water. Use this to the darkest color to create more details. Let's add like a little further away cliff right in here, and it's just gonna go in. There's gonna be a river right in here, and it's just gonna be faded. Okay. Sketching everything out first. So here we're going to add another cliff. Maybe there's these rocks here, right? With water in this darkest shade we have mixed. And we're just going to randomly go up here. And it's going to fade out. There's going to be a bunch of other details here that we won't is going to be covered, so I'm not going to focus on that part yet. So maybe this rock, it's a big rock right in here, and then there's another little rock coming down. Okay, there's going to be a lot of detail right here. There's a big cliff that it's going to be closest to us, and I'm quickly sketching this out, so it doesn't have to be perfect right now, right? I'm just kind of getting an idea just to start to see the image, right? I'm sketching everything randomly. So there's going to be like a bunch of little rocks here, and Let's go back to this color next and add more details right in here. Mix it in with the yellow a little bit and add some details over here. And I'm going to squeeze some white straight out of the tube. We're going to play with that white as well and create a little mist to lighten this area here. So I'm going to dab my brush in the water and use white. I already have some random paint in my brush. I'm not going to clean it. I just dab my brush in the water and then tap it on the paper towel. So you can see it has a little bit of this gray color here, greenish gray. And I'm going to kind of add that light white glaze randomly. Okay, use a little bit of yellow and orange, and I want to add a little bit more detail right inside here. Use white to brighten certain areas randomly. This is the base layer, so we're getting a sketch. So bear with me. I know it might be confusing at first, but we're getting there. So let's use this color and let's add that right in here. Okay, dab my brush in the water. Use this darkest color. I'm gonna darken this a little bit. Dab my brush in the water, use a little bit of white and this color and add it right here as the base. I know this looks rough right now, but bear with me. We are getting to the fun part. We're just sketching everything out first. Okay, so that's what's fun with a damp brush. It goes in smoothly. It creates like a more of a smooth transition. And that's why I constantly dab my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel, and use more paint. Okay, so I'm going to use part of the yellow and orange and create some detail maybe here by dabbing my brush. Maybe there's little details that are growing out of these rocks. Let's darken this a little bit by using, I'm going to squeeze part of the red straight out of the tube. I want to add a little bit more color to some of these areas here. So a little bit of red, not too much. Maybe mix it with the green. Okay, a little bit like this. With this color, we have mixed this grayish, right, randomly like that. And we're going to darken certain areas in our create some shadows in our trees, faraway trees. Use this color now with, kind of take away a little bit of that red away. Use a little bit of yellow and white, and we're going to add a little bit of highlights because of the light hitting these rocks. Okay. So a little bit of yellow with white, it'll create some details from the light. And we're going to create rays later at the end. Going to create a beautiful transition right there. So yellow and white again. Let's go back to this grayish color we have mixed. And then darker color again. Use this darker color. Add some little details in here. I'm going to switch to my number 8 brush real quick and just add a glaze with this dark color. Just add a glaze here. Randomly dab my brush in the water, use a little bit of this lighter color we have mixed right here, and create, this is like the base layer, right, of our rocks and details, so you don't need to worry about making it look good right now. We're just kind of slowly adding our details, and shapes. Almost like burnt umber, you know, when you add your darks and lights, shadows, and then you go over and start to slowly define. And that's how it is with painting. You slowly define things and add layers and layers and layers until the shape and details, you know, start to appear. So now I'm going to the darkest color we have mixed, and I'm just going to randomly cover the canvas. Okay. All right, so that's fine right now. Now I'm going to set my brush down and add some details to our faraway trees right here. So mainly, so this is like a sketch, right? And mainly we're going to now focus on trying to add a little bit more detail right here, especially these ones, because a lot of these we're going to cover with other trees here with more color. Okay, so with our detail brush, we're going to use part of this color. Okay, we have mixed, and I like to dab my detail brush in the water and then swirl it to create a nice tip. And so it has some water in there, but it's not a lot of water, but also it creates, you know, a nice, and then when you paint small, you know, areas, it creates nice, it makes it run smooth on the canvas. So that's why I use water, almost like watercolor, right? So Now, starting from here, I'm going to add like little details, far away branches that you can barely see. Okay, so I dab my brush in the water, use more of this color, swirl it to create a sharp tip, and then lightly add your branches. Barely pressing, I'm barely pressing. Just keep that in mind. Okay, and I don't want to add it everywhere, but mainly in some of these. Some of these trees here. It'll make it more detailed and interesting. So you could see dabbing my brush in the water using that same color. A little bit in here. And I'm barely pressing and working my way from top to bottom. And as I go down, we're going to make them a little darker on some of these. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of this darkest color we have mixed with water, same technique. And then we're going to darken some of these branches like that. Okay, dab my brush in water and then gently press and create like from the bottom, create a few in here of the darker ones. You can see how I'm fading it. I'm mainly adding the darker ones on the bottom here, right? And then I'm fading it out. A few more little details here will really make your trees start to stand out a little more. But you could see we added that nice, you start to see the shapes of our trees come to life by adding a few of these details, right? So we're gonna continue adding a little bit more. Totally up to you how much you want to add, but also you don't want to overdo it. So keep that in mind as well. Sometimes I can get carried away. So I'm gonna stop there because obviously these are further away trees. I don't want to detail them too much, but a little bit will make them look good. So I'm going to clean my brush down in the water, and I don't leave my detail brush flat in the water because it'll damage the tip. So I just kind of rinse it out, clean it out real quick, and put it flat on the paper towel. Same thing with my flat brush. The only brushes I really leave in the water are my number 8 and number 4. Okay, so we added a quick sketch, right, of our branches. I'm going back to my number 4. I'm going to add a little orange and kind of add a little bit of like orange transition. So let's add a little bit of this and orange and lightly add a little bit of that orange. Like I said, some of this is going to be carried. Or let's go back to the red, a little bit of red and orange. How about that? And let's add a little bit in the back right in here, that glow of red. Maybe mainly here. Okay, just a little bit. So dab my brush in water and add that with water. Okay, with water and a little bit of that red so it can work transparently. Okay, so I'm going to clean my brush now, add a little bit of that red in here randomly. I'm not going to detail these too much, but randomly add a little bit more details like that. A lot of this is going to be faded, so I'm not going to focus there too much. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush and then add a little bit of yellow and white. Okay, I'm going to make sure my brush is fully clean and then use yellow and white with water. Okay, my brush has some water in there, and then I'm going to lightly kind of go over everything right here with white and a little bit of that yellow. So I'm going to dab my brush in the water, pick up more of this yellow and white. Okay, and kind of take away the sharpness of the orange and some of the color we added. We want this area to be a hint, a transition from light going into more detail, right? You can kind of start to see that because we added more white right here. It's going to transition to more details in here. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit right here on top, and then obviously we'll stop right there. So there you go. I'm not going to spend too much time right now on adding more details to my faraway trees because, like I said, let's continue adding more detail to the closer trees, the next part, and see if we need to. We can always come back and correct and add more details later. But for now, I'm happy with the way it looks. We can move on. The most important thing is adding that smooth transition, this light right here, faded to a little bit of a darker tone, but not too dark. You see, we're starting to get into details that creates depth. And so now we're going to add more bigger trees and more details to our leaves with darker colors. For our next trees, this is the color we're going to use. Touch of white, orange, and scarlet red, and then white, carbon black, and sap green. I'm going to mix these colors and show you what I get. Okay, so I got this, and then I decided to take part of this here and then add black and scarlet red. I want to make a even darker reddish color. Okay, so I'm going to mix that and show you. And this is what we got. So something like this, you'll be good to go. All right, so we're going to pick up our flat brush and we're going to sketch out first, dab it in the water. We're going to sketch out using this darkest color we have mixed. a little bit of this color and some water, we're going to sketch out the trees where we want the main, tree to be. So first I'm going to I think I'm going to add one right here, let it go up, and then let it kind of curve. And it's just going to go different directions. Make it a little thicker here. Okay, so something like this, and then we'll, detail it and make it more prettier later. So then here we're gonna add, just kind of randomly, add all my little details like that, shaping it out. And then also we're gonna add one that is behind. For this one, I'm gonna actually, let's continue with this color since we're already painting with this like dark cherry color. We're going to add a few more branches. Like that. And then some in here. And then in here, I want to add one. And you can also use your detail brush for this part as well. Okay, so randomly something like this, you could see I created a rough. So I'm going to clean my flat brush and then put it flat. And now before adding and correcting, making it more detail, I'm going to use my artist sponge like we did with these ones. I'm going to start to create some detail. So I squeezed all the water out, and let's start with adding the green. So the one we have mixed in the middle. Okay, choose a side. You can play with the size by squeezing, right? So we're going to randomly start to add some of the green inside here a little bit like this. And it's okay if you go over our sketch right here, totally fine. I'm gonna add a little bit in here. Barely pressing. Okay, with just that green. And a little bit in here. On the bottom like that. And then as I go up, add a few in here. Okay, and then same thing with this same color. Let's continue adding some green in here on these branches. Randomly add some in here. Okay, that's good enough for now. And now I'm gonna clean my artist sponge in the water. Just squeeze quickly and squeeze all the water out so that you can get a clean artist sponge. And then we're gonna use the red that we have mixed, the red, to create some color in our leaves. We're gonna go over on some of the green and create beautiful red leaves just like that. Remember I told you we're going over some of the background detail that we added, so that's why you don't want to spend too much time, you know, trying to make it detailed, because once you add your placements of everything, sketch it out, then you can come back and, you know, start to detail and correct some things. So I'm adding red right now all over. I want this beautiful red leaves. See how nice that looks? Add some on this one, of course. And I'm moving around and trying to create variety and different shapes, and by squeezing, and I'm gonna make this area pretty dark in here, covered, I mean, with a bunch of leaves like this. Okay, so you see hints of the background faraway trees of that orange and yellow that we added, but now you start to see more color onto our tree right here, right? More like brighter colors. Okay, so now I'm going to use that cherry color we have mixed, okay, lightly, and I don't need to clean my artist sponge. It's red. So now I'm going to add even more detail on some of these branches. Okay, some more darker, and not everywhere, just on some of them. Maybe this area is going to be bright, so I'm going to focus on adding more of it on top here, kind of skipping some areas. Right? Add a little bit of it in here. I'm not going to go in here too much. I want that area to be kind of open. We're going to add more details later with our different brushes. But I want this area to be dark. Okay. You could still see that blue shining through, right? We don't want to cover everything. Same thing here. I'm going to add a little more darker tones right in here. Maybe there's a bush that is a little bit of a darker. I'm going to add a little bit more, maybe right here on the bottom. And in here. Okay, and I think that's good enough for now. I like it. I don't want to overdo it. So we'll add more later. Okay, I'm going to put my sponge down. Squeeze. Squeeze the sponge, clean it out. You could leave it in the water jar, but I'm just going to squeeze it. And for the next use, probably we're going to use it, or I don't know, we'll see. But I'm going to set it down to create space in the water. And then we're going to kind of play with, let's use our number 8 brush, dab it on a paper towel, and we're going to work damp. And we're going to add this orange that we have mixed, left over, this one, with this orange. We're going to kind of create a little bit more branches, brighter ones, right here where the glow is. So add that orange and then lightly use the corner of your number 8, and then you can also use your number 4 if you want. Totally up to you. So you could see I'm kind of adding that color on certain parts. Right here, maybe there's some far away, like the light is hitting it and it's brighter here. And you can go over some of the red, that's totally fine as well. So just that orange we have mixed, I'm going to continue adding my details. Add some in here. And a little bit of orange in here, kind of around some of these randomly, right? Maybe there's some color showing through. Thing here, a little bit of orange. Use the red. Start to as well. You can kind of play around with these colors. So I'm going to use a little bit of red straight out of the tube. Okay, a little bit of red and maybe orange, mix those together so that it won't be too harsh of a color, but we want to add a little bit more red on some of these plants or leaves here. Okay, a little bit more. red and orange. Play with those two colors and kind of connect some branches. Okay, so let's use an artist sponge again. I cleaned it, and I'm going to use red straight out of the tube. Red, let's add a little more color. Little more color right on some of these. Okay, a little more red. It'll make it really look more detailed and give you a little more color in our trees and make it look nice. And a little more red in here in this corner. You see, I'm not trying to go in here too much where the light is. I'm kind of going around it a little bit because I still want those blues to show through. Okay, so something like this. So now here, I'm going to add a few branches here that are coming down. I'm going to use this green straight, or the green that we have mixed, this one, right? I'm going to use part of this and create a few little details, here. And you'll see why I'm doing this. Maybe in here a little bit. Kind of going down a little bit like this. Okay, that's good enough. I don't want to overdo it. But that's good. All right, so before we add any more detail, let's go back to our detail brush. All right, dab it in the water, and we're gonna use this color we have mixed, this dark cherry red color. And we're going to start to add our little details, okay? So branches and things like that. So for example, here, I'm going to use this color with water, right? You want to swirl. We're going to kind of go back and create little branches. Okay, and so I'm going to spend some time doing that. And you don't want to do it everywhere. Just a few more little details, for example, right here. And water helps, like I said, to create that smooth transition. Makes it run smooth on the canvas, right? So I'm going to spend some time creating the little details. Dab my brush in water, continue. Kind of going over. Alright, so once you're done adding all your little details, we can move on to the next part. And we can always come back to the adding details later, right? But I want to fill in some of these and create a little bit more of, like, give it a little more depth. So I'm going to use this cherry color, mix it with the green a little bit, straight out of the tube, sap green, and this cherry color. And I'm going to go in on some of these, not all of them, and create a little bit of a darker tone. A little bit in here. I'm using my brush damp, right? So it's creating a nice, just a little bit, not everywhere, okay? We still like the red showing. We still want some of it, of these colors showing through. So I'm not gonna overdo it, but just on some areas, make it a little darker. Here. And then a little bit more on this side. Maybe on the bottom here. And then let it go out. This area is pretty good. I'm not worried about this area. It's looking pretty busy. We want to make it look like that. But I'm going to cover a little bit of that dark green on the bottom right here randomly. Create a little glaze like that. There you go. Now I'm going to use a little bit of white, and remember this color right here. Mix those two in, and I'm going to add a little bit of that light glaze onto this tree. Okay, just a little bit. I don't want a lot, just a little bit to brighten it. I don't want this one to stand out too much. Add some more little details of branches, maybe little leaves right here on the side, as many as you want. Okay, finally we're going to add a glaze with water in my number 8 brush and some white, right? A little bit of white and more water. So, and if it has a little bit of yellow, that's okay. We're going to add where the glow is. And it's okay if you cover some of the details that we added in here. You just want to create a little bit of that glow from the sunlight, okay, with water and a little bit of that white. And we're going to just try to mainly add it right in here in the middle. Light glow, and you can bring it down a bit. Okay, just like this. Even going a little bit onto some of the leaves here on the red. That's okay. Down my brush in the water, add a little bit of the white right in the middle here. creating that bright glow from behind the light from the sunlight, right? Shining through some of these. A little more in here. And you can barely see on the camera, but this really does a big difference. You could see it's more water, barely any paint, but it really creates that glow effect, and you want that. You want some of these areas to glow, shine through. So a little more white and water. Okay, in here. Some more white in here. Makes it look softer. There you go. So this is what we got so far. We're gonna work on adding details here to the rocks and things like that. But before we do, I wanna also, like we did here real quick, as the base, sketch out and add a glaze of these rocky areas here with a couple colors I have added here. So a thumb amount of white, carbon black and viridian, and then carbon black, more of that, viridian and sap green. So this will be kind of like the base, just to cover the canvas and get a shape to our rocks. Okay, so this is what I have. So something like this, you'll be good to go. Let's pick up our number 8 brush and make sure it's damp, but it doesn't have a lot of water. And we're gonna use the darkest color here and quickly start to add some of the shapes. Maybe there's some rocks, you know, and things. Let's go to our lighter color and let's just go over it real quick with the lighter color first, just to get an idea of where we want our rocks and things like that to be. Real quick, you can see I'm randomly added that here as well. That light green first. Randomly. Back to the dark green. Dark green real quick and just fill it in. Everything in. Fill it all in with the dark green. Real quick as the base. Okay, going in here, adding a little bit of that green in here. Go to the lighter color. Back to the dark green. Randomly add it all in here. It's all going to be dark. This is the base layer. We're not worried about adding any details. Just shaping it out and kind of sketching it and seeing how it looks, you know, and then we'll define it, make it look prettier, and add more darker shadows and things like that. So a little more lighter color right in here, lighter shade, I mean. Add a little bit in here, right, randomly.
And go back to your darker color and cover the canvas all over. There's going to be little rocks here and river, so I'm not going to add anything yet here. On the bottom, we're going to continue that as the next section. But we're going to come and work what's next closest to us. So like I said before, adding details here, I want to quickly sketch these out so that we can define it and make it look more detailed and beautiful. So real quick, fill in the empty areas. And it's okay if you cover it all up. I know it's kind of like a quick process, so I'm not worried about making it perfect right now. So I'm going back to the lighter color, kind of shaping out some areas, not everywhere. Getting an idea. There'll be some rocks in here. This is where the water will be, right? But I'm not gonna work on that yet. That's fine right now. Okay, so now I'm gonna make sure I don't have any brush strokes. I'm just gonna quickly kind of take away all the brush strokes real quick, lightly, and let this dry. And then once this is dry, now we can work on defining it a little bit, and then a little bit of the water too. Before we add detail to our rocks and the edges of our plants here, I'm going to quickly sketch out and add the base also to our water here, okay? I'm going to mix three colors, and this is what I have. A thumb amount of white, a little bit of sap green, and a touch of black. And then less white, a little bit less than thumb amount, more sap green, touch of radian, and black. And then less white than this one, as you can see, more sap green, about the same radian amount, and then maybe a little more, and then more, a thumb amount of black. This will be our darkest color. So I'm going to mix these and show you what I get. Okay, so something like this. I also added a little bit more black straight out of the tube. I'm going to make another darker color. I'm going to take part of this, like this, something like this, mix it with this black so we can have the darkest shade, because I want to do like a light, kind of because of the sunlight, it'll be kind of light here and then darker on the bottom, make this area pretty dark. So this is the base coat we're going to add, and obviously we'll add more detail, but I just wanted to add that before adding details to these rocks. Right here, and this time I'm going to use, because it's a bigger section here, I'm going to use the M2 blending brush, dab it in the water, kind of what we did with the sky, dab it all the way in the water and squeeze part of it out. There's not a lot of water, but there's a little bit still in there, and we're just going to quickly add, and it's okay if we cover some of these rocks, just quickly add the areas where we the canvas is showing. Like I said, it's okay if you cover some of the rocks that we already added, rough areas, that's okay. We're gonna go back and detail it in a bit, but we want the base layer. So this will be bright here, it's gonna go down, something like that. Dab my brush slightly in the water, and then add this next color, green. Somewhere here, somewhere here. You know, because of the reflection of the mountains, right? Or this rocks. And I'm gonna just add the green around. And it's okay if you go over a little bit of the light. Again, this is the base coat, so don't worry about trying to make it perfect. So, and then next color, this a little bit of a darker green. Okay, and then finally we're going to use the darkest color that we mixed here and just kind of fill in the rest of the area real quick with this color, darkest color. And we're going to use the M1 blending brush to quickly blend everything in. By now they should be dry. You see how I'm kind of swirling? I have a little bit of water, but not too much, and I'm swirling, kind of blending together the colors, but not really. I'm leaving this area light, right? And then cover the rest here. Okay, something like this. I'm going to put my brush in the water and then pick up my M1 blending brush to quickly blend everything in. Okay. Swirl. It doesn't have to be all, perfect, because we're going to obviously add more layers on top. But we just want to take away the brush strokes so they won't show through, right? So quickly do that, and then there you go. You have a nice base layer. You can even do this a little bit, because this is like the river here. It's flowing. But that's good enough right there. So now we have the base, we can start to detail this area. All right, so this is dry now, but we're going to continue adding the details here and then here and here, okay? So this is what I have. A little bit of white, medium yellow, and then less white, sap green, a touch of medium yellow, and then carbon black, a thumb amount there. And I don't want to let these go to waste, so what I'm going to do is add this lightest color. Just take whatever you have left, mix it with this, and then whatever you have left here, mix it with this, okay? And then this, I ran out of this one, so I'm just going to use this green, mix it with this. Okay, so I'm going to quickly mix this, and you see it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. I'll show you what I get, but it doesn't have to look exactly the colors I have here, okay? Something similar will be good. You'll be good to go. All right, so this is what I got. So basically, I moved this color that I mixed with black right here. I moved it to the side and took part of this, okay, right here. And I'm going to take part of this green, about this much, and create another shade, a little bit kind of more in between, these two. So it could be a little lighter. Still on the dark side, but we want it a little lighter, maybe a little more green here. We just want to create a transition between these rocks and these rocks. We want to make these ones darker than these. So something like this. Okay. Okay, so there you have it. All right, I did add white, just in case if we need to use white to mix with some of these colors, we'll use that. So a touch right there. And let's pick up our number 4 brush, dab it in the water, and make sure it's damp. It doesn't have a lot of water, but it's soft, your brush, right? So let's first create dark shadows with this color we just mixed. So we're going to go back and darken some of our rocks here. Okay, so I'm just going to spend some time going over some of these. I'm skipping a few areas because I'm leaving some of the background color, that gray showing through. I'm going to continue with this dark color, and kind of, because it's damp, it blends in with the background colors that we've already added nicely. Water helps make it run smoothly on the canvas when you have a little bit in your brush. So I'm going to continue adding the darks. Also, on these ones, I'm going to use a little bit of, let's use a little bit of the white that we added. Make it a little lighter, but we still want it dark. So actually use a little more dark here, mix it with a little bit of the white. We want to make it a little darker right here on these rocks. And then use a little more white. And we'll fade it out somewhere in there. Something like this. Okay, let's go back to this color right here. With our number 4 brush, we'll continue making darker shadows. Here, it's going to get a little darker, so we can use this darkest color and create even a darker shade inside. Go back to this color. I'm going to add a little bit of we can add a little bit more of this darker tone right by this tree. Skip some of the areas, and maybe these are little rocks that are coming out, or to create variety, you want to add a little bit of so it won't look flat, right? So we're going to go back, and now we could use the darkest color, and we could darken this area here real quick. Okay, just like that. I think that's good enough here. Okay, let's continue. Let's use the darkest color, and let's kind of add it on some of these rocks here. We can go back to this color now. Maybe mix it with this green a little bit. Right here where a little bit of that light color is showing. You can dab some of that green in. Maybe there's some plants coming out from this corner. You can add a little bit of the white to some of these rocks. We'll detail it, all of this later, but we're kind of getting an idea right now. Adding another layer. It's all about, layering everything, so take your time. Basically, keep in mind, the main thing you have to keep in mind is the light is coming and hitting these rocks. So the left side of your rocks, it's going to be light, and you're going to get that light highlights, right? So and then the right side of the rocks, they're going to be the darkest. So that's where the shadow and the darkest colors are going to be, right? So that's really it. There's no, the shapes of the way you draw your rocks, there's no right way of doing it. So you can create your own shapes and have fun with it. Okay, let's go back to this color again and continue adding some more detail here. I'm going to add a few rocks, right? So I'm going to add a few rocks in here, some little ones. Let's mix it with a little bit of this green and white. And let's add a couple far away rocks in here, coming down. Okay, let's go back to this color and add this rock right in here. I'm going to add a big one. Clean my brush real quick in the water and tap it on the paper towel. And I'm going to use a little bit of this green. Let's mix this darkest with the white again. I want to create a little bit of a light color right in here. Maybe add a little bit of some darker areas, shadows. Okay, so now we're going to clean our brush and use some of this yellow that we have mixed and create some highlights because of the light, right? So with our, and you could do this with your detail brush as well. I'm just gonna start on some areas, right? And then we're gonna use our detail brush. So for example, right here, I'm gonna dab it lightly like this to create that highlight glowing and hitting some of the plants here that you can barely see. And so I'm going to, maybe it's on the rocks, right, growing this moss. Okay, so something like this, and then maybe there's a little bit in here, and we'll fade it out. I don't want to overdo it. So with that yellow, we're going to go and add a little bit of some of the highlights to our rocks because of the light. Okay, so let's continue adding right here, right where this main area is. Use a little bit of white as you get closer to this section. Yellow and a little bit of that white. Okay, you can see I'm randomly adding it, creating a little bit of detail, but not too much. Highlight from the light, right? So I'm going to use a little bit of white and add a little bit of lighter highlights. Maybe this is from the sun, you know, it's like hitting the rocks and it's reflecting and it's a little bit misty, you know. So I'm gonna use a little bit of white and continue adding that in here. A little bit of that white and yellow. Okay. More white though onto our water. Let's use more white. Randomly add it. Add a little bit more of the white in here. And then obviously around this rock. And we're going to detail the water a little better, you know, add more beautiful details to it. But for now, I'm just kind of quickly sketching. Plus, I want to add a little more red, like from the leaves, reflecting a little bit to the water. I don't want it to look just green, right? So I'm going to add a little bit of this color we have mixed and white, and I'm going to add it right on some of these rocks. Remember, the light is hitting some of these rocks and creating that beautiful, beautiful glow on them, as you could see. So something like this. So I'm going to clean my brush, go back to my white, a little bit of white and yellow, small touch of yellow, but mainly white. With water, we're going to add some mist, like a fogginess to some of these areas. For example, right here. Right here, I want it to be a little bit more, you know, on the lighter side. Okay. But I don't want to overdo it. I want to leave some of these dark, you know, shadows from the rocks showing. So I'm not going to, you know, add it everywhere. But on some areas, like right here and right here, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and white, and I'm going to add a little bit in here as well, kind of going up, swirling my brush. Make sure your brush is damp, because then it'll you know, it'll run smoothly on the canvas and you'll create that nice beautiful transition. So right here, I'm going to go up a little bit and fade it out. I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow, that bright yellow in here. Just kind of randomly use a little bit of the dark and randomly kind of dab it and create little details. Make this a little less bright. Use this green we have mixed, this green shade, and we're going to add a little bit of that green shade right along here. Kind of dab it and create transitions. Maybe this is all like little leaves and little details that we can barely see. Right? Add a little bit of that bright yellow in here. Maybe that was a little too much. That's okay. Yeah, you can wipe it off. Easy to correct with acrylics. But I want to make some of these a little bit more detailed and interesting. Okay, I'm gonna clean my brush real quick. Use the darkest color with my number 4 brush And we're just gonna create a little bit more shadows underneath some of these, so that it will create depth in our painting. So a little bit of that darker tones in here, that darkest color. Go back to this color, the next darkest color, and create a little bit more details. It's a lot of going back and forth to create an interesting painting. And right now I'm just playing with the shadows and shapes of my rocks and looking to see if I like the way it looks or if I need to correct something, right? So be patient and just slowly go around, and you're gonna start to see. So I'm going to leave this area where we added that light, but I want to darken here because we're going to create also a little light from the sun glowing to our, so that's why I'm going to darken this a little bit more, and maybe in here as well. Dab my brush in the water and tap it on the paper towel and just kind of make this area a little bit more darker. Okay, we're gonna add a little more detail with the light coming in like this. So I'm gonna go back to that green color right here and kind of start to add a little bit more correction and detail. Maybe this is going up like this, coming down. You can barely see that, like that, and I'm gonna fade that out. Use a little bit of white. Maybe there's a little bright area showing through, a little rock showing through some of these. Take away a little bit of that light. Okay, I'm gonna use a little bit of this dark gray and white again with a little bit of water, not too much. And I'm gonna create a little bit of like a little shadow right here from. Okay. A little bit of the bright yellow that we have mixed. I'm going to tap and add a little bit more brighter details right in here. Okay. bit more of that color. All right, so for now, that's good. We can now go back to our detail brush, right? Detail brush, and we can really start to define things like with the white, right? With the white and this yellow, we're gonna go back and forth and start to swirl our brush with water, and we're going to go over and define some of these in here and create little details in our rocks, right? Just randomly like this. And not everywhere, but on a few areas like this, it'll make your painting, you know, give you more like it's going in further into the distance. So you want to create a lot of like these little highlights, right? With the white and a little bit of that yellow, not too much. And then we're just gonna create some lighter areas here and have it fade out. So a little bit of that white, gonna go up here, and you see how it creates distance. And so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna spend some time kind of going over and creating. If you hear in the background baby crying, I apologize. My son was born 7 weeks ago. So I've been busy with my wife, taking care of him, and you know, the doing the baby stuff. So my wife is watching him right now. So bear with me and pardon the extra noise. But you could see I'm taking time with the yellow and white and adding a little bit more details to my mountain rocks here, creating highlights and things like that. And that's the last step on these rocks here. And then as we get closer, we're gonna work on adding a little bit more detail to these closer ones. But for now, let's continue. And I'll add, as I'm getting closer, I'll add some white in here. All right, a little bit in here. A little bit of white. You can see I'm barely pressing on the canvas. As I'm going in a little bit, I'm gonna use more of the yellow and more water as I'm going in here. Closer, right? When things get closer, I'm just gonna start to kind of make it look, give it some more of the color. So this one right here, I want to add a little bit of yellow and white and create that highlight to this. Add a little detail in here. Make some of these a little brighter. So I'm going to spend some time creating these highlights, okay? It's basically the same thing. I'm not gonna add too much on this side, right? I'm just gonna add a little bit more right here and you'll see the outcome. I'm gonna fade it out. Just keep in mind the light is hitting the left side of some of these rocks. So as you get closer, they become more rounder, right? More facing towards us. So that's why you wanna make them a little bigger as they get closer. I mean, moving this way instead of all going up, right? You wanna create them and make the highlights kind of go in like a curve. That'll create a nice, transition from the far mount rocks and details to your closer ones. So I'm not going to go in too far in. I'm going to leave this as it is here. Maybe add a few little details here. And a few in here. And then with the white and a little bit of yellow, we're going to go over these rocks. Create a nice highlight here. Add just the white in here to these rocks. Dab my brush in water, use the white, continue going over your rocks here. Okay, that's good enough for now. We'll come back to the detailing of the water and the shapes and all the little details later, but we got the base and the idea right now of and the more of the detail, right, to our rocks and things like that, right? So I'm going to clean my detail brush, and then I'm going to go back to real quick to my number 4 and darken some areas like this with this color. I'm going to darken this area a little bit. I don't want it to be too bright here. Okay, so I'm going to use a dark color to kind of create a little bit of a darker tone here. Okay, just like that. Maybe a little bit in here, inside. Okay. We'll come back to the water later. Let's now sketch out our next closest, which are these ones, okay? I'm gonna sketch those out and add some detail to them. So we're gonna start with the same brush, number 4 first, and then we'll probably use our number 8 to cover bigger spots. But let's create, using the dark, we're just gonna use this dark one to create our dark shadows first. So dark shadow maybe in here, maybe skip some areas, you know, and create your shadows. So a little bit, you can see what I'm doing. I'm leaving the background sections kind of showing through, some of them. Maybe this one goes out a little bit like that. But I'm just using that darkest color right now. And maybe there's a big rock right in here. Some little ones right here. I'm going to skip this bright area. We're going to leave it as it is. And continue darkening this area here. And then here it's going to start to kind of curve. And we're going to darken this area. Something like this. So you can see we added our dark shadows first here. All right. And we're going to do kind of the same thing on the other one. I'm going to create darker shadows. First, I'll add a little bit dark here and then here. Demo brush in water, continue with the darkest color, and let's continue shaping and creating our shadows in our mountain, in our rock. And this is going to be a dark area right in here. All this is going to be dark because it's already inside. brush. We can switch to number 8. Let's do that. It'll be faster to cover the base or the shadows. So with water, we're going to continue in the darkest color. Continue kind of shaping out and creating our shadows randomly, and I'm letting it naturally create itself. I don't have like an exact idea. I'm just randomly creating shadows in my rocks and having fun. Dark some of this area here. I want this to be dark. And dab my brush in the water. Use this next dark color and with water kind of randomly add a little more darker tones. Okay. And now let's kind of add some detail with this green color in our number 8 brush, and we're going to kind of dab and create some little patterns. Well, actually first I'm going to finish this area section here. So I'm going to use that dark color and kind of fix this area here. Something like that. So now with our number 8 and this green color, we're going to start to add a little bit more. Where the light areas are, we're going to go over and kind of add a little more detail. Start to add a little more interesting. Maybe there's moss growing and little plants on these rocks. Right? So I'm going to spend some time randomly adding all the little details that you can barely see, or maybe you see them well. Just randomly dab and kind of follow your patterns. Let it naturally create an interesting shape. You can move your brush around, play with the patterns. Totally up to you. And in here, I'm not going to add too much. I'm going to actually add another tree that has red leaves on it to, you know, balance the image a little bit, so it won't look all too green here. Because I want the reflection of the red and the red leaves reflecting a little bit to the water. So that's why I want to make it a little more balanced. So randomly add that effect. You start to see something, you know, going on like that. Add a little bit of that. Well, this side we're gonna go back to our number 4 brush and do the same thing here with the green and a little bit of yellow. Just mix those two together, and we're gonna add some bright, this will be really bright area here because of the light. So we're gonna go over some of these and make them super bright. So with you could see them skipping some areas. Okay, continue. Play with the angles, you can go in a little bit on some of them. And then as you go up, make it a little darker with the green. Gets a little darker here, and then we'll fade it out. I'm going to add another tree on this side as well. Now I'm going to go back with the darkest color in my number 4 brush. I'm going to kind of go over and add a little bit of darker highlights. Maybe correct some of these. Darken this area here. Okay, and same thing here. Let's go back and kind of create a few shadows. With water and that darkest color. go over and create a few more shadows and details. In between, so it won't look flat. Okay, that's good enough for now. All right, so with a detailed brush, we're gonna play with white and this green color here, kind of like what we did here, but we're gonna use more of this green. But if we need to, we'll add a little bit of white. Let's just play with those two colors. And now we're gonna make this highlight and make it brighter. Okay, we're gonna create bright highlights here and a little bit more details in here from the reflection of the sun. With water and that bright green color. And we're just gonna have fun with this. Some of them could be small. Some of them could be a little bigger. Dabbing my brush in the water, swirling it, and adding a little more details. And then as you go up, obviously we're going to try to fade it out. We don't want to add too much on top here. And plus we're going to add, I think, another little tree, bushes or tree on top here, and I'll show you. But first let's continue focus on this. So I'm going to go over here and show you what I get. So you can see I added a little bit of detail here real quick, doing the same technique anywhere you want, right? Anywhere the shapes of your rocks take you. And then here, same thing, we're gonna add a little bit of highlight on the edge of this with that bright yellow color we have mixed. We're gonna continue and add a little bit of that bright yellow on the edge. Right here. don't want to overdo it here because this one is behind. So it's going to be more of a, the light isn't coming and hitting this, it's just the corner, just to create more of a curve to this mountain. We're going to add a little bit of light. Randomly add some of your bright highlights. And around some of these rocks. See, I'm skipping some areas and creating little patterns. Maybe there's like little branches and things that you can kind of see in a mountain. And if you added too much, go back with a darker tone and, dim it down a bit so it won't be too intense. So I'm going to spend some time kind of doing this real quick. All right, so we can come back to the detailing the rocks and things later, but we got the kind of an idea down, right? So now let's add more to this painting, and then we can always come back to any parts later, okay? So the final thing before adding a couple trees on the side, I'm gonna use my number 8 brush, clean it out, and use some water, and straight out of the tube I added orange and yellow. Let's start with yellow and a little bit of water. You could see I didn't add too much yellow on my brush, but it has more water. We're going to add a glaze of that yellow onto some of these here. Kind of add color to some of these right in here. Okay. And then a little bit of that yellow in here. That creates a nice, it gives it a little bit more color to our grass and things in the mountain right here. So I'm just gonna glaze it with yellow a little bit. Not too much yellow, okay? We don't want a lot of yellow. We don't want this to be just green, hard, we just want a hint of that yellow. So I'm dabbing my brush in water and using just a little bit of that yellow, and then adding a glaze of that over everything, over all the highlights here, to make it look a little more green. Warm colors. We want to add warm colors right here. So something like this, and then this side, I'm going to add orange. So a little bit of water and a touch of orange, not too much. Maybe you can mix it with a little bit of yellow, why not? And then just glaze it onto this one as well. With a yellow and orange, a little bit of water, randomly glaze it all over here. Okay, use a little more orange and yellow, why not, with water. We're going to glaze it all over right in here. You see, that creates a nice light hitting these and making it look even brighter. Okay, so we're working transparent, because water, when you don't have too much paint, you still see the details that you added. Because the layer of paint is so thin that it shows through. Okay, so that orange, a little bit more maybe with water. Gonna add a little bit of that orange color right in here. Dab my brush in water, use more orange like this, and glaze it over onto this rock, these rocks here. All over. Maybe a little bit of that orange in here as well, why not? On the bottom. Okay, a little bit of that orange on the bottom. Going to the top. Why not? Randomly. You could see it's barely, like, on the camera you can barely see this, but it really makes a big difference to your painting. Next step is we're going to add another couple trees. So I added a little bit of white, medium yellow, and orange, and then a little less white, more scarlet red, and a touch of orange, and then scarlet red and black. I'm going to mix these colors and show you what I get. Alright, and this is what I have. Orange, red, and then dark cherry red here. We're going to pick up our flat brush. Remember, the colors don't have to look exactly like mine. Something like this will do, okay? So we're going to pick up our flat brush and dab it in the water and use the darkest color, which is this red that we have mixed. And with our flat brush and some water, we're going to create some branches, kind of like what we did on top here. I'm going to just create a few in here. I don't want to overdo it, so I'm just going to have one that's kind of coming down and big branch maybe coming down here. Okay, and then you can barely see this, so, and then maybe one that's going to be right here a little bit. Okay, and we'll detail some more later. And then right here, I'm going to have a branch coming down. Maybe one. Maybe this one kind of goes up a little bit. Okay. I know you can barely see this, but create a few branches like that. I'm not going to overdo it, just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to clean my flat brush and lay it flat on the paper towel, and then use my artist sponge. And remember, dab it all the way in the water, squeeze all the water out, choose a corner, and we're going to start with the orange. This bright orange we have mixed, and we're going to choose a corner, and we're going to add some of the leaves. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to randomly add it and fade it out. Okay, something like this. And I'll stop right there on this side. Like I said, I don't want too much. I just want a few details so that my rocks will look, so basically it'll balance the image, right? Same thing here. Let's add a few orange ones right in here. Not too much here, but a little bit coming down. Follow the branches, right? Follow the branches and create as much of these as you want. Barely pressing, okay? All right, that's good enough right there. So now I'm going to use the red. I'm not going to clean my brush or artist sponge. I'm just going to continue and add the next color, which is this red, doing the same technique, and add some color to our leaves so that it won't look plain. So let's add that red. Okay, just like that. That's good enough there. And you can barely see this probably on the camera, but in person it's very nice. So makes a big difference. Create those beautiful fall colors right there going down. Okay, so I'm going to set my artist sponge down. I'm going to let this dry and then we're going to continue. Alright, so I decided to actually add one more color, this darkest cherry color, to create variety, and add a few of the darker ones on top. Real quick. And if you added too much, go back to the lighter colors and kind of go over a little bit and play with those colors. And there you have it. That's good enough. So now I'm going to pick up my number 8 brush and play with this orange color and our number 8, and we're just going to add a little bit of highlights to some of these leaves, especially on the edges. Okay, with that orange color, I'm going to make certain areas a little bit brighter on the edges. Let's use a little bit of white straight out of the tube. I want to brighten them a little bit more. So with the orange and a little bit of white, I'm going to randomly mix that in, and we're just going to dab it lightly on some of these plants or leaves here. I know it looks a little bit messy right now, but bear with me. We are going to correct and add details and make it look pretty and more defined. Add some on this side with white in that orange. To these ones right here. let's use black straight out of the tube, and we're gonna add a little bit of detail with our flat brush and the black. We're gonna add some branches. Remember, go over some of these and connect some of these branches with just a dark color. And a little bit in here. Okay, and so we're gonna go with our detail brush and kind of do what we did with our faraway trees. We're gonna use the black to define, so make them a little bit smaller, connecting some of these, right? Real quick. Take your time with water and paint, and we're just gonna quickly go over some of these. Make some small branches. And now, creating a little bit of highlight so that it won't just be black, we're going to mix a little bit of the red and orange and white and create a little bit of a lighter tone, like this. And we're just going to go over these again on some of them and create some highlights on our branches so that they won't be too dark, reflecting from the light. Like this. All right, makes a big difference. Same thing here, go over some of these and create a little bit of highlights. So finally, I'm going to, we can come back to them later, but I'm going to add a few more details using a little bit of white, yellow, and red. Mix those kind of together. Make a brighter color randomly, like this. And we're just going to add a little bit of these leaves a little thicker and bigger. Okay, some of them are going to be a little brighter in here. And in here as well. Okay, and then in here, add a few bright ones. It's a lot of going back and forth on this part, but little by little the painting will come to life. And then in here a little bit, let's add some details here real quick, not everywhere. Okay, and now I'm going to use red straight out of the tube, just a little bit, and we're going to glaze with our number 8 brush and some water. I'm going to glaze a little bit of red with water to some of these. I want to make them look a little more red here. And then in here as well. Add a little bit of yellow. And go over here with the yellow and water and make these brighter because of the light hitting some of these leaves. They become a little bit more brighter. Okay, and now I'm going to use black and some water. I'm going to darken a little bit and create some shadows underneath some of these, because right now it looks a little flat, so I need to add a little bit of shadows under my branches to make, and in here as well, to make this stand out more. Okay, so a little bit of dark black and some water. I'm going to darken some of these in here, creating the shadow a little bit. Okay, and then a little bit of black in here, inside, right here, making these stand out a little more. Okay, I'm just kind of randomly going over with water and creating that, giving that a little bit of a darker shadows, especially in here on top. I want this to be dark, so with water and a little bit of that black, let's continue adding up some more shadows. Maybe not everywhere on top here, but okay, a little bit of black and water, and let's add a little bit in here, inside. And we'll fade it down. Creating shadows is what we're doing. All right, so as I'm working with my detail brush, I'm playing with the green color and yellow, bright green colors right here. And with water, barely any color, I'm just going over and creating my rock shapes, right? So very, very small hint of this green and water. I'm kind of shaping out and creating some of my rocks, defining them a little bit more, okay? Creating highlights. So, for example, right here, right? And make that Okay. And I'm not doing it everywhere because I want this area to be dark still. So basically, add a few more little details. We'll come back to this part later as well. But I'm just explaining so that you get an idea how to create rocks. You see, it's starting to come to us. We're gonna work on this later, but let's add one of the final details here. Basically with white, we're gonna create some sun rays. White straight out of the tube, and let's add a little bit of medium yellow as well, straight out of the tube. And we're gonna use a let's use the number 8 brush, clean the brush out, and then we're gonna use let's start with white, a little bit of white. Make sure your brush is clean completely. So I'm gonna make sure I clean my brush and don't have any dark colors on there. And now I'm gonna use this white and a little bit of water. Okay, not a lot of white as well. Make sure it has more water. So now I'm gonna, the light is right here, bright light, right? So I'm gonna kind of just go straight down and create some sun rays. Okay. Okay, real quick with white, we're gonna add that nice sun rays glow. And as I go up, obviously, it starts to hit more like this. Okay. And that's it. I'm only going to do a little bit. I don't want to overdo it. Okay, with water and a little bit of that white. Gonna add a little more here. Okay, and a little bit more here, white and water. Okay, a little bit of white and water again, and let's start to bring it down. Dab my brush in the water and use white, and then here it's going to be even more down like this. Okay, hitting this rock here. And we'll fade it out. You want more white on top. You can make certain areas even brighter if you want. It's totally up to you. How much light you want to add to your painting, but this really makes your painting stand out more when you add these little details. So with water and white, I'm going to continue. I'm going to add a few more here. And then let's bring that down here. And we're going to curve it as we go. Right, and then we're just going to fade it out. That's good enough right there. Okay, so now we got the sketch of the white. We're going to go back and add a glaze of yellow over it. So I'm going to clean my brush and use a little bit of the yellow straight out of the tube with water. Okay, a little bit of yellow and water, and we're going to add a glaze of the yellow on some of these right here, kind of more over here on this area. You could see that yellow really makes it stand out even more, right? So around these, on the edges, we're gonna add that beautiful yellow glow. Gonna add a little bit of that yellow as we go up in here. Add a little bit of white, and this is totally up to you, like I said, how much you want to add. There you go. I'm going to add a little bit more white right in here, make this a little brighter. All right, let's continue. For the next section, we're going to add details, some rocks here and some details to the water. So this is what I have. Okay, a little bit of like half a thumb amount of white and medium yellow, and then about the same amount of white here, a little more yellow and orange, and then less white, touch of orange, and then more scarlet red. And then here I have a thumb amount of white, sap green, small amount, a touch amount of white here, carbon black, and sap green. So this one has more black. This one's going to be the darkest. So I'm going to mix these colors and show you what I have. And this is what I got. I also added carbon black and red straight out of the tube. Take part of this greenish, dark greenish color. I'm going to mix that with this so that this can be our darkest shade here. So something like this, okay? Right here. Let's pick up our number 4 brush and start with this brightest color. And my brush is damp, and as always. And so now we're just gonna outline, draw where the light is gonna be the brightest first. So I'm just gonna kind of randomly add like a little layer right here where the light I think will be the brightest in my painting. I'm gonna switch over to my number 8 brush actually. I think it'll be easier. So a little bit of water and this color. And we're just gonna add more water actually to my brush and tap it on the paper towel so it can work transparent in a way. And I'm just gonna try to add that where I think will be the brightest. Okay, so then next orange, I'm going to add a little color, right? Some color. Oh, by the way, I added a little bit of a dark shadow right here, just with the leftover dark paint I had. So something like that. Just go over it real quick. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. So a little bit of this orange, we're just going to randomly add it. A glaze with water. Some reflection from this mountain going down. Okay, and then a little bit of that yellow right in here. Maybe mix it with this, because we want to create a smooth transition. Okay, something like this. Dab my brush in the water. Use a little bit of this red now. And with this red, I'm going to glaze it. With a little bit of water. Add some brighter reflections, maybe from the, so a little bit of this red, maybe mix it with a little bit of orange so it could be smoother transition. And we're just going to add it right in here. Maybe it's some of it's reflecting from the trees. Okay, so you want that a little bit of some of the fall colors, so that it won't look, green, all green. We want some hints of red in there. Okay, a little bit more red in here. Mix it with the green, and remember my brush has a little bit of water in it. Dab my brush in the water, use a little bit of the orange. Try to make it smoother. Go back to the brightest color here. Try to make it a little bit smoother. Randomly add it lightly, and when it dries, it becomes a little faded, so a lot of this is not going to be super bright because of the water in my brush. Just keep that in mind. So a little bit of that brightest yellow color that we have mixed, and add it right here. And let's fade that out. Okay. Now let's sketch out some of our rocks. So what I'm going to do is use this green, this darkest color we have mixed, and I'm going to sketch out one big rock right here in the corner. It's just going to go all the way, and it's gonna come down right in here. Okay, something like this. Dab my brush in the water, use this red. And then here I'm going to add a little bit of that green. Maybe with a little bit of orange. Kind of dab it and create a little bit of the highlights onto my rock. Use a little bit of that red. Okay, so something like this. So we got a sketch of one of our rocks. Let's go back to the green. Right next to it, let's add another rock that is going to come up and be somewhere in here. I'm going to switch my brush to number 4. Use a little bit of red, and let's sketch out another rock that goes out somewhere like this. Add the shadows on your, this time you're adding darker on your left and then highlights on your right. Okay, so clean my brush and then use maybe this green and a little bit of orange. Let's add some highlights to our rock. Use a little bit of yellow if you want. And we'll go over with a detail brush as well. We're just getting a quick sketch and layout of our rocks. And we're going to go over, like I said, make it more defined and detailed, but I wanted to add some of these rocks to make it stand out. So let's use this green again, and let's add more rocks in here. So maybe there's one right here, maybe there's a couple in here. Okay, a couple little ones. And then maybe there's one that is like, okay, and then let's sketch out and continue adding. Use the red, the darkest color. Let's add a couple more rocks in here. Some little ones maybe in. Okay. And then it's going to disappear here. Okay, so now we're going to continue and we're going to add more rocks. Let's use this greenish one. And let's add a couple rocks in here. I want to add a little bit in here, so I'm going to add one right here, right, and then maybe a couple little ones in here. Let's add some in here. Maybe it's kind of connecting to this area, right, this big rock in here, right? Okay, and I think I think I'm going to let this be open here. I don't think I'm going to add too much rocks in here. Maybe you could add, like I said, you could add as much as you want, totally up to you. Maybe there's some little ones here, but it's really totally up to you how much you want to add, your rocks and things like that. But for me, that is good enough for now. Now we're going to add some shadows, and I'm going to use this darkest color. right? And then I'm gonna start to add a little bit of shadows from the rocks and with water. I'm barely pressing and I'm creating this effect, barely pressing with water. Okay, some of it's going to be going in a little bit. Okay, continue with this. You could use the dark green color for some of these. Okay, so a lot of this area is going to be pretty dark because it's in on the other side, so I want to make it more on the darker side, so something like this. And then here it's going to be a little bit also reflecting. Right, we want to keep this kind of area a little bit darker. So I'm barely pressing and kind of creating this wavy effect. This area is going to be pretty dark. And then let's use the green because I want to darken some of this area as well. Create some interesting shadows in our water, and I'm barely pressing. You could see, barely pressing. So here I want to create this shadow from this rock. I want to create, so I'm using a little bit of the green, and then I'm gonna kind of use the dark color and then kind of go in here a little bit and create a shadow and fade it out. Use the green. This area, like I said, is going to be dark. Like this. Down my brush in the water, use a little bit of this green, maybe mix it in with a lighter green, and I want to kind of add a little bit of green in here. Looks a little messy right now, but bear with me. I'm gonna make it look interesting and fun. Okay, so now that we have a sketch of the dark shadows, we're going to go back and add this light. I clean my number 8 brush, and with water I'm going to kind of go back and clean out a little bit of, you know, of that darker tones that I've added. I don't want too much in here. I want this to be still bright. So I'm going to go back to the orange. Okay, use a little bit of the light color. Let's actually use white. I want to add a little bit of even brighter color. So white straight out of the tube. We're going to switch our brush to our flat brush this time to create a cool effect. So flat brush and white and some water. And what we're going to do with the flat brush and water and white, we are going to create a fun effect starting right in here. So I'm going to kind of go around and create that beautiful glow from the sunlight. Okay, see how that makes it look interesting with the white. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend some time creating some highlights. Okay, and then in here, dab my brush in the water, and I'm going to use less white, and I'm going to kind of create a transparent, bright glow in here. But not everywhere. With water, and so I'm going to go in here for fun. And create a little bright area. Dab my brush in the water and use more of water, less white. We're going to continue. That's a little bit too much white, that's okay. We're going to use, let's use the green, this green, and mix it with white and this darker color. Let's get a little bit of a darker. A little bit more brighter white in here. We want this to be the brightest area. Dab my brush in the water, continue with the white. I want to brighten some of this in here. And then let's go back to our darker tone. I want to add a little bit of detail before we, well, let's use a little bit of this red. Actually this green with this darkest color. I want to hint lighter shade right there. Kind of randomly go in here. Okay. Okay. A little bit of that darker tone. And now let's dab our flat brush in the water, use this green, maybe mix it with red. Okay, and we're gonna add a few, go over some of these and kind of follow the same patterns with the dark. Okay. Okay, go back to the red, just mix them all randomly. Dab your brush in the water. And we're going to continue adding. I want to add a few darker spots in here. Maybe a little bit of a orange lighter color, but still in the dark side right in here. You can see you can always correct and play with your colors that you have mixed, right? You can always correct. Okay. Something like this. Use a little bit of a darker green to take away a little bit of this area in here. Use a little bit of white again. Dab my brush in the water, use white and maybe a little bit of this bright yellow. Kind of dull this a little bit, make it a little bit less intense. Okay, I like this. I want to add another one of these somewhere maybe in here. A darker one right there. Shadow. Okay, use that red and we're going to create some darker ones in here. Maybe a little bit in here. Totally up to you. Okay, so it's coming together nicely. All right, we will dim this a little bit, and then for now we're going to stop right there, and we're now going to go back. Actually, let's add one more darkest color. Since this is pretty dark, I want to add a darker one. In here, small ones. Okay, yes, this takes a little bit of time, but it's a lot of fun as well. Okay, something like this. Okay, I went over a few times, glazed it with a little bit of yellow and white to, take away the sharpness, so it could look like, faded a little bit. And now for our final couple details, we're going to add some white, and let's play with this white, and let's use a little bit of orange and a little bit of this white with our number 4 brush, and you could do this with your detail brush as well. But I'm going to add a little bit of reflections from my rocks. Kind of create your own patterns and add some reflections. Not everywhere, okay? Just a few areas. Remember, try to keep it on the right side. You want to add your highlights. And then fade it out somewhere in here randomly. Okay. Same thing here. We're going to add more white. Let's add a few white reflections in here in the water. Few bright ones. Okay, and then with the light white and yellow orange, we're going to remember this rock. I'm going to add that light on this rock. Right on top. Like I said, you could use your detail brush for this part as well, but I like to create make it look a little rough. I can always come back with my detail brush and correct, make it more straighter and things like that, but I like to sketch it out first. So now I'm gonna use a little bit of that green that we have, the green, and let's add the green right in here. Okay, that's good enough for now. Okay. Let's use the orange that we have mixed with white, and let's go over this one. This one's going to be a little bit straight down. I'm going to use the green and dab in here to create some patterns on my rocks and things like that. You can fade it out in here somewhere. Okay, and let's add a few more in here. And then a few details on these rocks. Use a little bit of that yellow or white and orange, We're just going to create some highlights here. On this time, it's on the left side because the light is hitting here. Okay. Now we can go back to our detail brush and use more of the white and either yellow or orange, and we're gonna make it even cleaner on some of these rocks, smaller ones. Dab my brush in water and continue that. And then you can also add a little water, kind of ripple around the rock. Make it a little brighter so that it looks like water's coming around it. And if you added too much, go back with the dark and dim it down a little bit. It's a lot of back and forth. And same thing here. I'm going to spend some time kind of going over, like I said, and highlighting my details of my rock, right? Creating more shadow highlights and having fun with this. Totally up to you how much detail you want to add, okay? Like I said, with white, with a little bit of orange and a little bit of white and water, you can go around these rocks and create little ripples. So it could look like water is going around it. And a little bit of white in here, right? I'll be done for today. Now, like I said before, you can take a step back and see if you need to adjust or add anything, create more highlights, more rocks. You know, go back and detail as much as you want, totally up to you. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Again, thank you guys so much for your great support and happy Thanksgiving. And also, if you're interested in learning more in-depth lessons, join my mentorship at the link down below. All right, guys, take care and God bless.